Hello, welcome to another episode of MTGC and Brewery. This is Lackey number 2, co-host, and this is similar to my bant control deck that I did a couple weeks ago. Except now it's evolved to more of a flash style deck. Because whenever you tapped out in the control deck, it just never ended well for me. So I made it more flash and a very few cards that you tap out for. So here we go. There is 4 Sylvan Caryatid, just good creature, good against aggro, ramps. No more explanation needed. 2 Voice of Resurgence, because it's good against everything. No more needed to explain it. 2 Thassa, God of the Sea. She's really good. She almost never becomes a creature, but against control and midrange, she's really good. She's not that good against aggro, so she usually comes out after the first game, but she's still decent. So then we have a 3 Syncopate, really good cancel, good against early cards like midrange. Like green-red monsters, which is more mid-rangey.
Get that burning tree.
And good against aggro, or turn 2 burning trees, as long as I'm on the play. But we have a 2 Silencia Charm, good against green-red monsters or the mono-black deck creatures. Just exiles a bunch of big stuff. Good against aggro, makes a 2/2, or just buffs your guy to swing past their small guys. Or against mid-range, when you buff your small guy to block their big guy. Kind of bad against control because you just get a 2/2 out of it, but it could be worse. And then 4 Azorius Charm. Just good, played in every blue-white deck. No more explanation needed than that. 2 Sphinx's Revelation. Standard for a control deck. They usually run 3 or 4. I don't. I like to run more threats than spells. And then like a card like this that gets you to threats. So, I got 1 Dissolve. Just a good cancel. I didn't want to play too many, though. And then 1 Plasm Capture. So we only have 5 counter spells. But, yeah. It works out. Plasma Capture is just a really cool cancel. Gets you a lot of mana. You can use it for your turn. Being able to play turn 2 Caryatid and cancel something turn 3 with a Plasma Capture, and then untap during turn 4 with a lot of mana. Really good. Really fun when you get to do it, too. We have 3 Advent of the Worm. It's a 4 mana 5/5, basically. It's flash. Really good against every deck. Against control, just a threat they have to answer. Usually with a Supreme Verdict or Tension Sphere, which is on their turn. Then you can untap while they're tap low or whatever. And then against midrange and against midrange, it just usually trades or blocks some of their somewhat smaller guys. Against aggro, it's just a beating, because Mizzy Mortars is really the only removal they have for a big creature. So Advent's just really good, and it blocks a lot of the time. Then we have a 3 Supreme Verdict. I don't like to play 4 because I do play a fair amount of creatures in this deck, or cards that act as creatures. And it's just in there because it's good against aggro and midrange. And we have other threats that survive it. Or like Voice becomes a different creature when it dies. So it's just really good. Bad against control. But that's kind of explanatory because they don't play that many creatures. We have 3 Detention Sphere. Because it's just good against everything. Except it can't hit itself, which is a downside. But still, without O-Ring, this is the closest thing we got. We have 2 Primeval Bounty. Which, as I said in the last one, is just insane when everything else you do after that has a free spell attached to it that can't be cancelled. Just gets silly. Just beats everyone, basically. Then we have 2 Jace, Architect of Thought. Standard for control, he just digs you deeper. He's good against aggro because it's a distraction that makes their creatures weaker. And then his ultimate doesn't really come up that much because either he gets answered or you have to -2 to try and get out of a bad situation. But his ultimate does let you win the game more often than not. It's pretty fun. Really cool. Then we have 1 Elspeth. Mainly because I only have 1. But it's just good against everything. Against mid-range, it just kills big, dumb dudes. Against control and aggro, it makes a bunch of guys. And then its ultimate, you can use it to kill control decks. Usually not against aggro because you have to block a lot with your 1/1s. But eventually, you might be able to win with it. So then we go to lands. We have 1 Erotrix, 1 Mutavault, same thing as before. A man land that's really good, and a land that destroys other man lands, or Nykthos shrines. We have 1 Hallowed Fountain, all we have of that, and then 2 Azorius Guild Gates. 4 Temple of Garden, we only have 3 Breeding Pool. We have 3 Temple of Mysteries. We only have 5 enter the battlefield tap lands, so that always enter tapped, so we thought that was a good number. Then we have 3 Plains, 3 Forests, and then 4 Islands. That's my ideal of a mana base, and it works out a lot. So, only time I get mana screwed usually is not because of colors. It's because I usually just get stuck on 2 or 3 land, which is really bad. So it happens though. Now we're going to the sideboard. Just a sec. And so we have one pithing needle, mainly because we couldn't find room for another out of the sideboard, maybe for this other one over here. But it's just good against like green-red monsters or control decks that have a bunch of planeswalkers.
Name that Garrett.
Yeah, mostly against green-red monsters because Garruk is that's what a control deck cares about in the green-red monsters deck. Nothing else. Garruk will beat you into the ground. So pithing needle is what we have against
Garruk first, then Exignos.
Yes. We have two Swan Song, mostly for the opposing control decks, like blue-white control decks that play Sphinx's Revelation or Counter Magic. This is just one blue. You can just leave it open anytime you want Sphinx's Revelation for like 6 or 3 or 2 or 4. And it's almost guaranteed to resolve as long as they don't have a lot of Counter Magic and mana open. So it's just really good. And every now and then when you go up against a 4-color burn deck, from co-host number 1,
I'm Josh.
You know what? Stop my 4-color burn. We have one Glare of Heresy, which could come out for another Pithing Needle, but it answers Detention Sphere, which is really hard for this deck to do. And also, opposing Elspeths or any white cards like kills Voice without getting them a token. So, it's just really good. We have two Scavenging Ooze, which is just really good against bringing it in. You can either play it if you have a heavy creature hand against aggro, or after Supreme Verdict and just make it big and gain all the life. And then it's just kind of hard for them to get through it, because whenever they attack, they lose something and you make it bigger and gain more life. So we have two Daxos of Meletus, which is more of a fun card, but against control, when they don't have a lot of creatures, like Esper or Blue-White, which they keep in. Esper might keep in the removal because I have a fair amount of creatures that are actually threatening to them, and Planeswalkers. But when it's just a good way, like you just get a hit and cast cards from their deck until they answer it. And against mid-range that have big dudes, they can't really block it, and then you get to cast their stuff. And don't bring it in against aggro usually, because it just usually is going to trade, not really going to connect that much. So we have two Heliod. This is for the mid-range and control matchups. He doesn't become active that much either, but he does make an army of dudes, which is good against mid-range and control. Bad against aggro, so that's why we moved him to the sideboard for this deck. And then we have two Council of the Absolute. Now this is a lot more of a fun card.
Mm-hmm.
What's with the face? But against blue-white control decks, you can either name Sphinx Revelation, but if you get two, which is unlikely because there are only two on the board, but in that chance, the first one really needs to name a Supreme Verdict, because that's really all
If you have two in your hand.
If you have two in your hand. Because it just stops them. You can still cast yours if you need to, but now they can't answer all your creatures with a Supreme Verdict. They have to kill this guy first, which is really good for you if you display have a bunch of creatures out. And if that's why we have one Madomi the Ageless. Really just fun. Good. It's good against control. You can take extra turns if it lives. Doesn't often live, which is a shame. But it's decent against mid range. Don't really bring it against aggro because it's 6 mana, it's 4/4. But against mid range, it just flies over. Again, extra turns, and you can do a lot of stuff with extra turns. So
if they always kill it, it must be good.
Yes, it must be good. Our Modern Worm is more mid range and control matchups because it makes 2 dudes for 6 mana, 10 power. Really good against mid range. It's 2 blockers. You trade up with bigger guys that have 6 toughness, like Arbor Colossus, Roark Thar, big Mistcutter Hydras that you can't really kill. And against control, you have 10 power for 6 mana, which they have to answer, or else they'll die very quickly. We have one Angel of Serenity because it's specifically for the mid-range matchups. You just get to eat their board and then have a 5/6 that blocks and kills them. So that is my Bant Flash deck, Bant Flash Control. If you enjoy it, thank you for watching MTG Steam Brewery, and hope to see you next time.